Hey everyone, I'm Anne-Marie from Hella Basque, and today we are talking about the Basque language. If you are new to this channel, Hella Basque brings you video every week about the Basque Country and Basque people, and this is one video part of our introductory series on the Basque Country, so you can go back and watch other videos about what the Basque Country is, a little bit about the different regions and the people who live there, so I'll link those in the description below. But today, we're talking about the Basque language, Euskera. Or, as my dad calls it, Euskara. There are many different ways to pronounce things in Basque. There's a lot of different words to mean the same thing in Basque, and we're going to get into that really shortly. But first, I want to talk about what makes Basque so special, why it has captured the interest of linguists for centuries. And that is because the Basque language is a pre-Indo-European language. Now, I have been saying that for a really long time, but not a lot of people know what that means. Like, unless you're actually a linguist, like what is pre-Indo-European, right? So I finally looked into it for this video. Now, an Indo-European language is one of the languages that's descended from an original language from the Stone Age, the Neolithic era, which was about 12,000 years ago. So that's languages like Romance languages, Celtic languages, Slavic, Germanic languages. Most of the languages of Europe are Indo-European. So Basque being a pre-Indo-European language, that means it's older than all of these languages. That means that Basque is older than 12,000 years old, which is when Indo-European languages came on the scene. So, like, that's a long time. Like, before 12,000 years ago, like, no one really knows where it came from because they didn't, well, if they did keep records more than 12,000 years ago, like, they didn't survive till today. So we don't know what Basque is related to. It is considered a language isolate, which means that basically of all the living languages there are today, it is related to none of them. Now, that's not to mean that maybe in the future linguists will find some connection with something else, but as of today, in 2019, it's an isolate. Nobody knows what it's related to, if it's related to anything at all. There are other non-Indo-European languages in Europe, like Hungarian, Estonian, Finnish, Maltese, but Basque is the only pre-Indo-European language in Western Europe. There are other pre-Indo-European languages around the world, but Basque is the only one in Western Europe. So that's a fun fact. So what you really need to know, get out of all of that, is Basque is 1, super old, and 2, nothing like French or Spanish. Let me say it again. Basque is not related to French or Spanish. So, because the Basque Country is technically in France and Spain, a lot of times people are like, oh, is it just like French or Spanish? It's not. It's not actually. It's older than those languages, and it's completely different sounds, pronunciation, grammar, totally different thing. Basically, it's really impressive that the Basque language is even still here. It's hard to tell how many people actually speak Basque around the world because I haven't seen any studies about it, but studies done within the Basque Country itself range that there are about 750,000 to 1 million Basque speakers in the Basque Country itself, depending on the source. So it's a very small language, but it's very much alive. And that wasn't always going to be the case of the Basque language. A few decades ago, the Basque language was definitely on the verge of extinction because for centuries, Basque was not promoted. French and Spanish were the dominant languages that were actively promoted. Now, in France, we can thank Napoleon for that. Going back to when Napoleon came into power, around that time, there were only around 20% of the population of France that actually spoke like French the way they spoke in Paris. Around 80% of the population actually spoke their own regional languages, so Breton, Occitan, Corsican, Basque, or even just different types of French that were not what was spoken in Paris. So Napoleon came in with all these new laws and rules, and he wanted a really strong centralized French government to build his empire, and in order to do that, people needed to actually understand the language and what he was trying to do. So he really pushed a whole new education system that really required everybody all throughout France to learn French. So Basque slowly started to fade there, but also in Spain for centuries, Spanish was promoted as the main official language. And definitely in the 20th century, Basque was on the verge of extinction because under dictator Francisco Franco in Spain, Basque was straight up banned. It was outlawed, the usage of it in public spaces, because part of the Basque Country fought against Franco in the Spanish Civil War, and so he was not a big fan of them, and he really wanted to push a strong Spanish identity. The Basque language became lost in a lot of families and wasn't as taught So in the 1960s and 1970s, a group of Basque teachers, scholars, academics got together with Euskaltzaindia, which is the Academy of the Basque Language. They're kind of an institution to regulate the Basque language and promote it. So these people got together and were like, hey, we need to come up with a solution to this problem because our language is dying, people are not speaking it. Now, in order to grow the language, they needed to be able to actually formally teach it. But the thing with Basque is there are so many regional dialects, people didn't speak the same Basque. So unless people learned Basque at home, it was really hard for people to learn Basque. So they decided to come up with a standardized Basque, a new Basque, a unified Basque called Euskara Batua, or Batua for short. And this is like the official Basque. They came up with a whole new language based on the Gipuzkoan dialect, the central dialect in the Basque Country. And they chose that dialect because the majority of Basque speakers at the time lived there. And even today, Gipuzkoa has the highest number of Basque speakers than any other Basque province. So a lot of people spoke it there. And from my understanding, kind of the dialects on the outskirts of the Basque Country, it was hard for them to understand each other. So Bizkaia all the way to the west and Siberoa all the way to the northeast were like very different Basques. And so it was believed that Central Basque, Gipuzkoan dialect would be easier for these dialects on the fringes maybe to understand. So Gipuzkoa won that battle. Also, Gipuzkoan Basque had a little bit of a literary history as well, so there was already written records of it. So they based Euskara Batua on that. So the idea behind it was that there would be a Basque language for the future. Because Basque is such an ancient language, there weren't really words or vocabulary to talk about like highbrow academic topics or like new technologies and science and things like that. So when people wanted to talk in like professional settings or government settings, school, people had to default into speaking French or Spanish because they didn't have the words in Basque or the know-how of talking about these different subjects in Basque. So with Unified Basque, that has all changed. There's now a standardized Basque that's used in media, literature, government. It's used very widely. Now, people informally in the streets and at home still speak local dialects, but new language learners still learn this unified Basque. That's really great for people like me who are trying to learn the Basque language. It gives us a structure, it gives us a set rules of grammar and verb conjugations and all these things, vocabulary. So it's really good for people trying to learn the language if they didn't learn it at home or don't actually live in a community in the Basque Country that speaks mostly Basque. It does have its critics. Some people fear that with Unified Basque being more and more, local dialects will die out. Also, kind of older generations who never learned Batua, they struggle sometimes to understand it and get
frustrated with it.
And some people just straight up call Batua like an artificial language. They call it a fake language, something that's just been made up by these like academics in ivory towers, and some people don't like that. But overall, Euskara Batua has been essential in the revival of the Basque language. And while we have yet to see how much Basque language usage increases in the coming years, so far in the last few decades, they've definitely gotten more young people speaking Basque, and Basque language is being used more and more, which is incredible news. This revival of the Basque language has largely been in Egualde, the southern Basque Country, which is where most of the population of the Basque Country lives anyway. But that's also because in Spain, Euskara is recognized as one of the official languages of Spain, whereas in France, French is the only official language. So there's no public funding for any sort of Basque education. It is not encouraged by the state. And so a lot of the Basque schools and the efforts to create Basque language programs in Iparralde, the northern Basque Country, have really been more grassroots, community-led by parents and students. It's a smaller operation, but they're still there, and it's really great that they are. Now, full disclosure, because I don't actually speak the Basque language yet, I'm hopeful for the future. I don't feel right in giving you any examples of pronunciation or Basque words at this stage. Maybe I will in the future as I learn more and more. But if you want to hear what the Basque language sounds like, I'm going to link in the description below to different videos that I've found on YouTube that I think are helpful. So you can check that out later if you're curious. Also, side note, if you think my sweater is pretty cute, if you like it, I'll link to the description below where you can find that in the Hella Basque shop. If you haven't watched the introductory videos on the Basque Country and you're curious about it, go check those out. And if you enjoyed this video, give us a like. And if you want to learn more about the Basque Country and Basque people going forward, please subscribe to this channel. Hella Basque is bringing you new videos every Thursday, so I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.